Hello, good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
Myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 17th of April 2016. Loads and loads of things going on. We have a few bits of information to talk about and we have great guests on the show. Our first guest is going to be Vin from PIR Radio. We're going to be talking about the 2016 Census and what's going on with that. And then at 8 o'clock we're going to have James Evan Plato from Media Monarchy. He also does co-hosting with James Corbett on the Corbett Report. So hopefully we'll get James in at 8 o'clock. But before that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Yes, communication channels this evening.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thanks, Mary. Yes, the phone number is 046 927 1212. Unfortunately, the phone line is actually offline this evening. We did have an issue during the week, and the phone is offline, so there's no point in trying to ring in. We hope to have that sorted for next week. We do have the chat room, the oymradio.com. You will see the link for the chat room. You can log in there. We also will be monitoring, we would be monitoring people's internet radio chat room, but there's an issue there with PIR this evening as well. I don't know if people can check that out, but if you can get to it, let us know in the chat room. We were having problems accessing it this end, so therefore we will not be able to monitor the chat room over there for questions. So if anyone is listening on the PIR stream, which does seem to be streaming quite nicely, if you do want to pop some questions in for Vin or comments, you're going to have to go into the OYM chat room to do that. We also have the YouTube channel that's available on the website as well. The link is down the bottom. And we also have the anti-social media Facebook. So if you want to check us out on Facebook, you can... Oh, thank you.
Just bring you up a little bit.
Yeah, save me shouting. Yeah, we do have the Facebook. That link is also on the website as well. And if you want to listen to us on your Apple device, your iPhone, your Android, and all those kind of devices, you can download the TuneIn Radio application. The link to that can also be found on the website. That is a free download, and you'll be able to listen to us on the go.
Brilliant. Okay, now we have we want to crack on and get this information about the census and talk about that, but there's just a couple of things that we want to mention first. Steve's going to start us off with that.
Yeah, we've mentioned this the past couple of weeks, and it's the Banking and Money Reform Conference with Professor Richard Werner and a submission from Positive Money UK. That's going to be happening on the 29th of April. I'm guessing we still haven't got a venue for that. It does say the venue is to be announced shortly, but it is going to be the 29th of April. It's going to be a morning to mid-afternoon conference. The entry fee, if you're a corporate and academics, will be €50, private individuals €20, and if you're a student or unemployed, that is €10. Again, date for your calendar, 29th of April 2016. As we said, the venue to be arranged shortly. As soon as we have information, we'll let you know.
Brilliant stuff. And just the other thing, two other things. According to the Independent.ie, which is Dinny's newspaper, so whether you believe it or not is another thing. According to the paper anyway, Fine Gael passes motion reaffirming a commitment to maintaining a national utility for water. Now, as far as I know, that's the update. Now, there could be new information on that. I know there's kind of arguing on both sides whether they should continue or not. I think Fianna Fáil were talking about doing a suspension for about 5 years. So we'll just have to see, just keep an eye on that and see what happens. But I think the majority of the people have decided anyway that we're not going to pay it. And
they've been passing motions for a long time, and I don't mean the ones that they're talking about either.
Yeah,
and still, I believe even Joan Burton, she's on record during the week as saying she thinks people are coming around to accepting the water charges. How wrong could a woman be?
God, she's delusional. She's delusional. Right, okay, and the last thing before we get Vin on is just to say that I popped over to the new office in Mullingar of the Westmeath Land League / the Hub, kind of a mixed group there, and I met up with Dermot and Sandra, and they're doing a fantastic job. Dermot was on the show last week, so if you want to tune in on what Dermot had to say, listen to last week's show. But they did a fantastic job. And there's a lady there called Frances who has a shop there, and she does all nurses' uniforms and stuff like that. So if you're married or you're in a relationship and you want to play games, you can always go over there. But Frances has a great shop. She does all the uniforms, and she actually has given the space for free in her shop to the Hub. and to the Westmead Land League. So fantastic, Francis. Thanks for doing that. And they have a room, they have a kitchen, they have a little office, and they have a meeting room as well. But the problem is that we need more volunteers. Dermot and Sandra can't do everything. Literally, they are inundated with people, and they need people. And I'm not talking about people being qualified legally or anything like that. If you can answer the phone and take a message, or you can do a bit of photocopying, or you can do a bit of typing, just basic stuff, and you can volunteer and you have a few hours, by all means get in touch with them, give them a ring and contact them and let them know that you have a bit of time and they'll help out, because it really does make a difference. Dermot and Sandra are doing a sterling job over there, but they really need more volunteers to help out. People have been fantastic, by the way. There's loads of donations coming in of equipment and everything else, so it's really, really great that what they're doing. We are in a crisis point in Ireland regarding what's going on with the banks, and it's just unbelievable what's happening. Everybody's beginning to feel in some way. So something needs to be done, and the only way we're going to solve this is people power. Don't rely on the government. They're just a waste of space. I was really researching jurisdiction today. I was doing, one show after another, listening to different people talking about jurisdiction and everything else. And what it boils down to is our government is just a group of thugs that threaten you. If you don't give us the money we want or whatever we want, we're going to lock you up or we're going to fine you. That's all they are. They're just thugs, all right? Legal thugs, if you want to call it that. We will do a show on that in the future. In the next few weeks, we're going to be on the show on that jurisdiction and talking about it more in depth. But just to let you know, that will be coming. Right, okay, without further ado, we want to get Vin on. We want to get cracking, because we have Vin till about 8 o'clock, and we have James Evan Plato coming on. So let's talk about the census. Good evening, Vin. How are you doing?
Gentlemen, how are you?
Hey, not too bad, not too bad. Right, Vin. Right, we all know this has obviously got to do with Ireland, because we have international listeners as well, but maybe it might be a benefit to them to actually listen in, because one day they might need to have to do a census as well. So we'll see how we get on. But let's get the background. In 2011, we had a census sent out to everybody in Ireland, and it was done by, I think the company, Vin, was Cackeye. Was it Cackeye?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, who are involved with the Abergrave torture and all that kind of stuff. And people said, we're not doing that. We're not getting involved. We're not going to do this form fill out this form because, number one, it didn't have an actual sovereign seal on the form anyway, as a private company involved with interrogation. So 2011 came and went, and, they just forgot about that census. So here we come around again, 2016, and it's the same company, I believe, that are doing the census, apparently. And again, I haven't seen, what I've seen so far, I don't think there's any sovereign seal on the actual document itself. So it's a private company. And then there's obviously threats from the government that if you don't fill it out, so they're forcing you to make a declaration, which in my eyes, as far as I know, nobody can force you to make a declaration, so that's illegal. And they're threatening you with a 44,000 fine if you don't fill out the form. Now, my understanding of a contract, Vin, and you can confirm or deny this, is that when you sign the contract, then you're creating the law for that to happen. Plus, as I say, it's a declaration and you can't be forced. So, again, what the government are doing are forcing you by threats to do something against your consent, and then threatening you that if you don't do it, there'll be a big fine. So, let's just put it into perspective, right? If I was to go down to the local high street and I grab somebody and I said, give me your wallet. If you don't give me your wallet, I'm going to beat you up. That's immoral, right? But because we have a group of people in the government who are doing the same thing, they're threatening us, and if we don't do it, they're going to fine us. They're saying that's moral. Well, I'm saying it's not. It's still immoral. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. It's still immoral. They cannot tell you to do something against your consent, because that's just immoral. But anyway, so that's just my take on it, and there's loads more of that, but that's just breaking it down into a small part. Now, myself and Vin and Steve, we cannot tell you what to do with the census form, because that would be seen as mutiny regarding the Irish government. So, but what we're going to tell you is what people have told us they're doing. right? Which is fine, because we only passed on information of what they're doing. Okay? So, Vin, let's start off with the whole census. So before we get down to the form and what's in the form and everything else, first of all, what happens? Well, first of all, this guy who's the enumerator knocks on your door, and he doesn't post it in the letterbox. He has to talk to you. He has to give it to you. Now, we've been told that these people are getting paid for every form that they put in. So there's a monetary incentive for them to make sure that you get the form off them, because if you don't get the form, they don't get paid, apparently, allegedly. So you have a choice, I suppose. And what we've been told is this: by some people have decided that, they don't want to answer the door because, it's a security thing, and they don't feel safe answering the door because there's a lot of scammers out there. People dressing up in fluorescent jackets and stuff like that, pretending to be people they're not. So they decide, and there's no law, Vin, you can back me up on this. Do you know if there's a law out there that says that if anybody knocks at your door, you have to answer?
There's no law or legislation in that regard that I know of.
Right, okay. So there's no law that says, and this means as well with the Gardaí, if you've done a crime, they'll kick your door down and they'll arrest you. But otherwise,
if it's criminal, they don't ask questions. They just smash their way in.
Exactly. So, and this is alleged, by the way, because they can't kick your door down when you haven't done something. You have to do something for them to kick your door down. Is that
Correct.
right, Finn?
Correct.
Right, okay. So what some people have chosen to do is to not open the door, because you don't know whether that's an enumerator or whether that's just somebody trying to flog you, briquettes or car parts, or is somebody trying to suss up the house to see if they want to rob it. You don't know.
On top of that, Alan, we have seen quite a few stories over the last year, I think, where people were getting pulled over by other cars coming up behind them with blue flashing lights, and it turned out they weren't even members of an Garda Síochána.
Exactly, and that happened over in Galway, and obviously there was another case where an actual guard got in a car with two women and was violent towards them, and he was an actual guard. Right, so that was another case. But yeah, there has been cases that they have a blue light and people think, oh, it's the police, so pull over, and they get beaten up and get robbed. Right, so you don't know who's knocking at your door.
No, you've no way of knowing.
You've no way of knowing. So, the best way is obviously to err on the side of caution and not open the door if you don't want it. And there's no law that says you have to open the door.
Well, can I just go back a little bit for you, if you don't mind? Just back to the 2011 census.
Okay.
So-called census. I even have a problem calling it a census, because census supposedly are carried out by the official sovereign government of a nation, as it were. And you're correct in what you said, that this company that's performing so-called census, I call it the senseless, in Ireland and other jurisdictions, is just that. It's a company. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's no such thing, for example, as an Irish company, which also begs other questions about standing in court and whatnot. Where are they getting their standing in a courtroom if they have no nationality against a citizen of same, but I'll get into that later on perhaps. But the 2011 census, first of all, I'd say the reason I didn't feel any obligation to participate in the 2011 census, not because of that company's involvement in Abu Ghraib or whatever the hell it was they were doing. The reason I didn't feel any obligation is because I had not obligated myself. And I think it's very important people realise this, that if you have not obligated yourself to do or not to do something, that's where your freedom lies, and you choose what you do or do not obligate yourself to. It's like arranged marriages. They're gone now in Ireland, supposedly. But, I can't create an obligation for a single man, my son, or anybody else to marry a woman he's never met. And this kind of falls into the same kind of category in many regards. Now, as far as I'm aware, I think I am the only one back in 2011 that absolutely went through the entire non-process, I'm going to call it, where I did not participate in that particular so-called census. As I said, I can't really call it an actual census, but they were trying to make it appear as if it was a census. And it's similar to this one as well. They're just trying to make this appear as if it is a census. And I felt no obligation to participate, obviously, because it wasn't run by any state that I could figure out. And they did come here and knocking regularly. Eventually, apparently, they had some type of a court case, and seemingly some entity supposedly was fined the 25,000 euros and jailed for 6 months. Now, the guys in the blue suits, people call them Garda Síochána sometimes, they came here, and they seemed to think that had something to do with me. They seemed to think that I was the one that they had to bring off to a prison or to fine 25,000 euros to, or something along those lines. I did exactly what you were talking about, Stephen Allen. I did not open up. So therefore, I let them uphold the Constitution. I put this video on YouTube. I don't know if you remember it. I called the video something along the lines of Garda Síochána uphold the Constitution, because that's what they did. And it's for them to uphold. It's not for us to uphold. We did not swear to uphold it. They did. So, in fairness to them, obviously decent men, they acknowledged their obligation, which is their obligation. They obligated themselves. They were the ones who swore the oath. We, the people, swear no oath to uphold or comply in any regard with the 1937 Constitution. So, as I say, as far as I know, there was a newspaper article where they said there were 6 people chosen, apparently at random, or some maybe they had a raffle, I don't know, and they carried out all these court cases and whatnot on. And I did see a paper clipping later on where they said they started off with 6 and eventually they went to 5 people. So all I can assume is they just decided, well, this guy, meaning myself, whoever, apparently he's not interested in participating. So eventually they let it go. As far as I know, I don't know if they still have a kind of a stick up there, you know what, about this. Yeah. But as I said, as far as I know, I'm the only one who went through that entire process and did not get involved. They tried to do all sorts of things, and I'm the only one who actually came through the whole thing unscathed, as it were. Even though, you know, it wasn't nice. There was a lot of callers. We had a lot of guys in blue suits here knocking and banging for quite some time. They tried to embarrass me in front of my neighbours. They sat outside with the lights on and the sirens going and all that jazz, you know. It was like a mobile disco. But it didn't bother me in the slightest. I didn't know what they were up to. I didn't make any presumptions or assumptions about the whole deal. And I just thought, you know what? I'm not feeling lonely at the moment. I'm happy in my own company. And I didn't open up. I just said, well, those people out there apparently know what they're doing with regard to the Constitution, so I'm not going to interfere. And I think that's very important, because a lot of people out there seemingly are being encouraged by others, Alan and Steve, to open up the door, tell them to go F themselves, all this type of stuff. I don't think that's good conduct. I don't think it's right to do that. And as I said, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to or not to do here. I agree 100% with what you said there. As far as I'm concerned, I made this determination for myself.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's a few things we need to go through, okay? So I've seen the video, and it's, you know, fair play to what you did. And there was one case I actually heard so far that an enumerator actually called a Gardaí. I just don't believe, this is just unbelievable. If it happened, that's unbelievable. And apparently the Gardaí came in with the enumerator, and the person felt obliged to open the door. Right, and she took the form because the Gardaí gave it to her through this enumerator, right? Now, again, you are not obliged to open your door, and there's no law that says it. And that Gardaí could be maybe somebody dressed up pretending to be a guard. Who knows?
Who knows, exactly.
Your security is paramount.
It's essential for people to understand. The way the Constitution works is silently. It is silent. And if you open up silently, you have essentially vacated any obligation on them, or relieved them, as it were, of performing that obligation because you opened up.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, so let's move on. So for the people who have done that, they obviously maybe they don't have a form, which is fair enough, because they're not interested in partaking to whatever system or whatever service your man wants, or the enumerator, whatever they have to offer, they're not interested. Right. So let's go to the next stage. Right. The next stage is that the enumerator, they do open up the door. I don't know what the enumerator says. Apparently he says something to the person about getting details. I don't know, Vin. But, so apparently...
Well, I can talk to you a little bit about that if you want, because I've witnessed that a couple of times as I was in some friends' places over the last few days.
So you've seen this happening. So what... Okay.
So essentially what they're doing, essentially they're trying to establish what we know to be known as what they refer to in the system, not maybe census enumerators, but the system, the judiciary, etc., would consider this subject matter jurisdiction, the granting thereof. Some people used to call this a joinder, but a more accurate term is granting of subject matter jurisdiction. And what that does is anything you say to them, essentially they accept as testimony. You are testifying against yourself, essentially. And when you give them testimony, they use that testimony somehow to generate some type of a unique alphanumeric string and list of numbers and letters, essentially, to confirm you have acquiesced or consented.
Okay.
And that will be used further on down the line if you fail to comply with the rest of the deal, you see, with the rest of that contract, essentially. Now, there is a question in your chat box back related to the thing I said earlier on. Do you mind if I respond to that from Heron?
Well, Steve has all the questions, so what we'll do is... Do you want to do
Okay.
do you want to read it out there, Steve?
Just before we move away from that, if you don't mind, I would like to address that. That's okay.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, they said, can you ask Finn if when the court made a determination in his absence, is the fine registered against him and will it take effect if he sells his house? So a couple of things there. One, I don't know what they did or did not do with it, and to be honest with you, I don't care. Number two, with regard to selling the house, well, I'll never be doing that. I plan on having a roof over my head for the rest of my life, and I only need one, and I have one, so I'm happy. So it's not going to be an issue for me, ever.
Yeah, exactly. They seem to do that with the property tax as well. They seem to do that. If they do take a judgment out, it's the assumption that if you sell your property, then they're going to get you then. But if you're not planning to sell your property, then we might as well just wait for it, you know. And the law could change then, you know, in 10 years' time, you know. So I wouldn't be worried too much about that. Steve, do you want to add anything in? What's your take on things at the moment? What are you hearing on the grapevine?
Well, what I'm hearing is that some people who have taken in the form and done the subject matter jurisdiction without even realising that they've done it. Some people have actually done that, and then they've heard information on the internet, they've read information, they've listened to some audio clips, and now they're kind of thinking, that may not have been a good idea. I now feel like I'm stuck. I don't really want to fill this out, but what can I do?
Okay. Well, Vin has a couple of cases he heard that he might be able to enlighten us.
So what you can do, for example, if that's the situation you find yourself in, what I'd say is not what you can do, but potentially there are options. There are options available to you. So, for example, I might consider putting the little return to sender label we've all spoken about on the radio down through the years, which is very simple. And I might just pop a little sticky label on that, and I'd pop that little card back into the post for them. But, you know, drop it into one of those, what they call post boxes.
The red ones, is it?
Well, red underneath, I think. Yeah, they're still red underneath.
Okay.
But,
We won't go down that route.
There's a fresh red one along the canal in Dublin somewhere, but we won't get into that.
Okay.
I drove past, I saw there was a fresh coat of red paint on it. But, and again, what you're essentially doing there is you're letting them know, I'm opting out. I opted in, but now I'm opting out.
Okay, because...
See, the way contracts work, you can opt in and out, depending on the contract or what way you've committed yourself to. We can always walk away from contracts. Now, sometimes there are consequences and repercussions, as they say, if you walk away from a contract. You know, like if I promised you I'd do X, Y, Z and you performed for me, you know, like if I promised you 100 quid for digging my garden, you dig my garden, and I tell you to sod off, you know, there's an issue there. You're going to feel aggrieved. You're going to feel you're entitled to what I promised you, essentially, and more than likely you'd sue if I didn't give you satisfaction.
Yeah.
Which is good, decent, and proper. That's correct. One should honour one's contract.
Yeah.
When, however, you're either duped into participating in a contract, they're not supposed to be considered lawfully binding. If somebody has tricked you, essentially, into getting involved in a contract, you're not supposed to be held accountable for them.
But what about if this is forced because there's coercion here with a threat?
Well, there's not really, you see. They word it that way, but, if you read it incorrectly, you could end up at that, making that determination. The way I see it as it's just an invitation or an offer. It's kind of like, dear Bob, would you like to participate in this? So, I know they have other language in there, but again, if you have a basic working knowledge and understanding of the 37 Constitution even, which is a very effective tool if you know how to use it, you won't really feel that concerned about that. Now, at the same time, I understand a lot of people are concerned because they think, well, I haven't got that information or I haven't had the time to study it and read it. I would encourage everybody to go get themselves a little Blue Book Constitution, a 37 one for Ireland in particular. It also raises questions about the people, for example, in the so-called 6 counties who do have an Irish passport. They're not even being asked to participate in the census. So it begs the question, why not? Also, I've seen people say, well, let them know you're going to be out that night. There's no obligation to let them know you're going to be in or out that night either, folks. And, quite frankly, it's none of their business as far as I'm concerned. Exactly. None of their affair.
And they would have no proof anyway, whether you are in or out anyway.
Of course not. So it's a ridiculous, well, I don't mean ridiculous, but it's irrelevant, essentially.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I know people have said that, on the night we're going to be out, that. But you don't need to do that because nobody's going to be there watching you. Nobody's checking you.
The funny thing was that back in 2011, when they ran their so-called census, and they performed all that jazz against me, as it happens, I don't think I was even in that night anyway. I was away. I was actually out on the road, I think, that night anyway. And I could probably prove it if I had to. Not that I felt any need to. I don't feel the need to have to inform anyone about my whereabouts. I mean, I did when I was a child. My mother and father, before I was 18, were entitled to know my whereabouts. Once I turned 18, it was my father who explained it to me. He said, right, you're now 18. I don't need to know about your whereabouts anymore. And the only time he would ask me, he would say, well, I'll be closing the hall door at midnight and it gets locked. And if you're in before then, great, you have a bed to sleep in. If you're not in before then, you can sleep on the porch. But he would no longer ask me about my whereabouts. So I understood that. From that moment in time on, my whereabouts was my affair.
Yeah. Okay.
And if my mother and father weren't entitled to know about it, how can the people in Leinster House and their cronies, how can they possibly be entitled to know any of that information?
Exactly. I mean,
essentially, and they put it in the Constitution too. They basically very clearly in the Constitution say to everybody, your privacy is important. Now, and they also say they protect the family. They tried to pull a fast one by claiming the family is only based upon marriage, which is not true. But even if they did want to say that, well, if you're single now, or maybe you're in a relationship with someone and you're living under your own roof and you're not married, essentially, that protection can still apply to you if your parents were married, if your grandparents were married, or if your great-grandparents were married. As long as they were married, someone in your family was married, after the 1937 Constitution came in play, you are effectively part of a family that is covered via the Constitution because your family has marriage within it.
Yeah.
On top of that, the 9 words I've been telling people about, which are very, very effective for a long time if you want to learn how to protect your privacy and to maintain your privacy rather than protect, I suppose, just to maintain it, if you like to maintain privacy in your own life. Anybody, and I mean anybody who comes and asks you what you feel to be potentially invasive questions, all you have to say, and I tell people to write these 9 words down, I only discuss private family matters within the family. Now, if they want to continue that conversation with you, they would surely have to demonstrate to you how they are now part of your family. Otherwise, they'd have to, you'd have to basically open up the door and allow these people into your family. So they're very careful to define what family is and is not in many regards, but with regard to the Constitution, they're very careful to not define the family.
Okay, so the return to sender is one method that people have used. What about the people that feel they're a bit scared and they feel that, they don't want to do it, but because it's private information, there's information in there, medical information they want to ask. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's between you and your doctor. It's nobody's business in Dáil Éireann what the medical issues are between you and yourself. And
as far as I'm concerned, as you know, I don't consider them Dáil Éireann, but that's fine. No, they call themselves that, but however.
That's another argument.
We can move away from that one. But, okay, so with regard to all the other, inverted commas, information. Now, the way I see that is, there's a form that's been dropped off in your home, your dwelling, essentially, and it's got little boxes that require some information to be placed in the box for them to say they are satisfied that you have complied, inverted commas, somehow, correct?
Yep.
That there's compliance from you. You're not being uppity, you're complying. Now, to comply with the granting of information, an empty box, they would say, has no information in it. And if that empty box, if I put a little horizontal line from right to left or left to right across that box, seemingly that box now contains information. Correct?
Yeah. Well, it's information,
Yeah, they would say, mark a box XYZ or whatever, but they do say mark your box with that horizontal line, right to left or left to right, depending, or from the center out the edges if you have a pen that can do that.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is, if one were to place that little horizontal line in every single box, you have provided information. Now, whether they can make determinations or filter through that information and figure out what it means or what it doesn't mean, that's not my issue. That's their issue. If they feel they have been given no useful information, well, that's not my problem, and it's not your problem. That's their problem.
Yeah.
Or their issue. But you have complied. That's compliance. They seek compliance, so that is a simple way of granting compliance, and I can't see that they'd have any information from you that they would find significant or useful. Now, this is not to be boisterous or to be, anti-establishment or anything like that. It's just simply a method to protect your privacy. It's nobody else's job on the entire planet to protect your privacy bar you. That's your job. If you don't want to protect your privacy, by all means, I'm going to tell everybody, by all means, fill it all out, tell them everything they want to know. That's the easiest way of dealing with the census, is tell them everything they want to know.
Yeah, give them everything. Now, the signature.
And so, in other words, if you were to do this, is to provide information, just a little straight line in all the boxes, and a horizontal line. When it comes to the part where they are saying signature, one could make a form of a signature. When I say a form of a signature, I mean, there was a time if I wanted to be a sailor and I stepped on board at the gangplank, the book or the paper would have been put out in front of me there with the contract. Make your mark. Well, an X. X is a signature. Mm-hmm. One could also print in block capitals, as it were, the name. So in your case, A-L-A-N, etc.
Yeah.
And in fact, you could actually stop at Alan. Once it's written in blue ink, even in block capitals, that is a signature. It's a sign that a natural, living, breathing man or woman signified something. You see, you're signifying something there. One could also use the bi, colon, and an actual, if you will, a cursive signature, with joined writing, etc. Yeah. My feeling is that the block capital signature as such would be sufficient. Again, even though they might not be entirely happy with this, I don't feel they would be able to successfully perform a prosecution in any way, shape, or form, because you could just stand there shrugging your shoulders saying, well, hey, I complied, didn't I? You asked questions, you sought information, I placed information into that box. They might say, well, we don't know what that information means.
That's not your problem. That's their problem.
Sure. You see, now, they don't ask for meaningful information. It may be implied, but there's no obligation upon you to provide meaningful information. And as I said, there's also the fact that the Constitution has many articles relating to your privacy that they claim they will uphold. So if you've put the little left or right in all of the boxes, apparently they will uphold your privacy.
Well, obviously, if you want to look at rights, then as far as I'm concerned, we have the right to govern ourselves and we have the right to privacy. So if we have the right to privacy, then they are forcing us against their own rights.
Well, no, they're not forcing you. They're inviting you.
They're inviting us, okay.
It's an invitation. Yeah, you see, again, you know me, I'm very particular with the language. There's an invitation. Now, there's an invitation, essentially the invitation is saying, if you comply with this, or if you comply agreeing to accept the form with a view to filling it out, and then if you don't fill it out, then essentially you're agreeing that we get to fine you for, what was it,
44,460 or something ridiculous.
That's an interesting figure. I'd be very interested to find out where they came up with that figure, because it was 25,000 seemingly into 2011. I wonder how did they allow for inflation or something in that, or were they?
Yeah, well, no, I have to pay for the Dole bar, you know.
Well, I suppose somebody has to pick up the tab, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I see that as just, they had to pick a figure, I suppose, that sounded scary.
Yeah.
You know, that's a figure that a lot of people would fear, my God, what am I going to do if I have to make up that figure? How am I going to go about it, you see? So that would make people who didn't know better, or who didn't, read up on these matters, it would make them potentially cause them to feel fear. Essentially, what they're doing is they're taking advantage of people's fears, and they're trying to use those fears to their own advantage, and these are supposedly servants of the people. Now, when people used coercion and threats like that, those people in there would tell you that those people are terrorizing people. Essentially, what they are doing is, as they've always done, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is they are attempting to terrorize the people into compliance.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's correct. I don't believe it's... I will say this, Al. I don't feel there's anything to fear from this. So, as I said, I've been through all this, and I didn't fear any of them. I didn't like it. I was very uncomfortable when there was men with guns outside my door, banging on the door, and my family and I were in my home, in the dwelling. It was a very uncomfortable time, and it was worrying, but I still did not fear it.
Yeah. Well, see,
they were here numerous times.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying about the whole idea of thugs in government and forcing you to do things against your will. That's all they are. They're just a group of people who will threaten you or use intimidation, coercion to get you to comply to what they want, and then they call it democracy. They say, well, you guys voted for it. No.
It's even worse than that. They claim to be in servitude to you.
Yes, exactly. Well,
it's even worse. It's even more repugnant.
And I put a thing up on Facebook today, and I said, so if 51, so again we go back to morality, right? So if I go to Steve and I say to Steve, right, give me your wallet, I'm going to beat you up, right? That's immoral, right? It's just immoral. But if you have 51% of the population who agree that the government can apply the same process, that give me your money or we lock you up, that's still immoral. Just because they say it doesn't mean that it makes it moral.
Well, that's not exactly what they do. I know a lot of people see it that way, but it's not exactly what they do. They do put a slight little twist upon it, you see. What they say is, because we've had your agreement about X, Y, and Z contracts and situations in the past, we're now going to say that because of that in the past, we're going to now use a similar methodology to, it's not quite to coerce you, and it's not quite exactly a threat. As I said, I'm living, breathing proof that it's not a threat, because I've been through all this, and I came out the other side, and apparently nobody has an issue with it. Apparently. I mean, at least as far as I know. I mean, at one stage, I think, what did they call themselves? Something like the Chief State Solicitor's Office or something like that. I could be wrong. But they sent seemingly something, and I put a sticker on it and returned to sender, sent it back. It arrived the next day again, and this time I whacked another one on it and sent it back, and that's when I stopped hearing from them. And I felt okay. I said, well, that's grand. Seemingly now they finally got the hint. I'm not really interested in getting involved in this. It was after that then I had the guys with the blue suits. Some of whom, as I said, I feel terrible sorry for some of the situations they're going through at the moment. They have a very confusing time in their lives at the moment, because a lot of them are caught in that paradigm on just following orders. I mean, which of course is the one phrase that almost every evil committed by systemic operators since mankind began doing this. It's the one phrase everybody who is performing an evil function has actually said to another. I'm just following orders.
Yeah.
Bang.
And of course, I've looked up this during regarding the Nuremberg trials and the European law regarding the Geneva Convention. And it states that if a superior officer tells a member of the Gardaí to do something that goes against the law of the land, that Gardaí is responsible.
Absolutely. That's always the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah, people need to know that. Just because the senior guard tells the guard to do something, the guards need to know that. If he's breaking the law of the land, that he's responsible.
Believe it or not, there's no such thing, and this is something members of An Garda Síochána really need to get through their head. There's no such thing as a senior or a more elevated member of An Garda Síochána than them. Yeah. They are all equal, all of them. They may have and hold different ranks, but they're corporate positions. So if you're a member of the Garda Síochána, you have exactly the same power, which the reason you have the power is because you are one of the people. All of we the people have all of the power and more than members of An Garda Síochána. I think we the people need to realise that, and I think members of An Garda Síochána need to realise that. They do not get the power of arrest when they become members of An Garda Síochána. They always had it.
Yeah.
We all have it. And I don't mean citizens arrest here. I mean just arrest.
Okay, just another method that I was told about. Again, I don't know whether this is something that people would do or whether what's the possibility of this. But basically, somebody said to me, well, they're actually asking us to fill out a form. And that actually takes a lot of my time. And my time is very, very valuable. So this person said, well, I'm going to send them a contract. I'm going to send them a letter and say, more than happy to fill out the form, but it's going to cost you €44,460 to fill out the form because, you know, my time is very valuable, and more than happy to fill out the form because if you're going to say to me that if I don't fill out the form you're going to fine me, then if you want me to fill out the form, then that's how much it's going to cost you for me to fill out the form.
Well, I'm delighted you said that because that was the next area I was going to. That's what's known as equity.
Yeah.
Equality, equity, you see, and equity promotes equity, as the wonderful Mr. T always said. So essentially you're saying, well, you are the guys, apparently, you guys put this value on this. I mean, that's the value they've put on it, placed upon it, seemingly.
Exactly.
The 44,000, whatever the hell it is. So absolutely feel free to make a counter offer to their offer. Now, the thing about contract law, folks, is when somebody makes a counter offer to your offer, it can evaporate the original offer.
Oh, that's interesting.
Absolutely. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say I put car for sale in the local ads, 1,000 bananas, smackaroos, euros, whatever, okay, dollars. $1,000, car for sale. You show up to my house, you look at the car, and you're happy with the car, but you're not happy with $1,000. And you make me a counter offer, what about 900, Vin, right?
Yeah.
And I say, no, I'm not accepting 900. And you say, okay, here, I'll pay you the 1,000. I can say, no, it's now 1,500. You cannot sue me for that, to purchase that car for 1,000. Even though I had an advert in, offering it for sale for 1,000, because your counter offer evaporated my offer of 1,000 to you. Now, it may not for somebody else, but because you made a counter offer, it's no longer available to you. That is contract law 101. Look it up, folks.
And I think it's important for people to realise that there's no law that says you can't ask questions.
No, well, there's no legislation that says you can't ask questions.
I mean,
law is different to legislation. I know I'm very picky, and I know I give people a pain in the arse about this, but I think it's really, really worth getting the two established firmly in your mind. Law and legislation have a scant relationship with one another.
Okay, so we'll clarify that. Common law is natural law, and legislation is positive law.
Well, I wouldn't even go with common law, just law. Okay,
just law.
Common law is different. Common law takes into account other areas, mostly Crown common law, and that's other areas. I mean, people could call Sharia law common law from those neck of the woods as well, but we wouldn't consider that common law here.
Yeah.
So, but there's law is different again, and law is silent. It's absolutely silent. So, law is things like, gravity, the passing of time, etc., light and dark. That's law. Okay. Legality is everything where somebody essentially makes a determination about the conduct or behaviour of other individuals. All of that's legislation.
Okay.
So everything that's happening in courtrooms essentially is legislation. Now, people might say, well, what about a murder or a murder trial? Again, they conduct murder trials and all of that type of stuff under, it's kind of like quasi-law, quasi-legislation. It's kind of like in a flux. It's like in a quantum flux. And it's only at the end when they make a determination that it becomes settled.
Well, the whole idea of this chap who sent off the letter to the CSO was he just said, well, look, I'm happy to fill out this form and, here's the invoice, and if you just pay me that fee, I'll be more than happy to fill out the form. That's it. That's it. As simple as that. So, he's waiting on a return from the CSO to see what they say, because that's a good way to do it. Now, do you have any questions, Steve, for Vin?
Just on that, if you don't mind. Just the interesting thing about that is that, for example, if they do not perform on the contract, then they are releasing you from the obligation to participate. And I would also follow that with, say, for example, I might, if I was interested in doing that, I'd send them and say, here, well, I'm interested in doing it, guys, but I'd like to check for 44, whatever it is, thousand. I'd like that in advance. If you don't send it to me in advance, prior, before the date or whatever it is, I accept that you accept you're not asking me to participate.
Yeah.
And I'd send them a little kind regards. Thank you very much for releasing me, as it were, from that contract.
Yeah. Totally. I think that's very important that you, at the end, you would say
well, it is,
in the
because
letter.
Then you can stand, let's say they do fine or try to take you into a court, and let's say you go in there. You see, you now have no fear of going to that courtroom saying, well, hey, judge, they sent the census the little thingy. I sent them a counter offer, and they rejected my counter offer, which means, their original offer is gone too.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant stuff.
That's the problem.
Right, question time, Steve.
Yeah, just if you were to go down that road, Vin, and communicate with these people, would you have to communicate with the CSO, the Central Statistics Office, or would you have to? Would your counter offer have to go to the person who knocked on your door and presented you with this offer in the first place?
Well, there's no have to, as far as I'm concerned, but which would be more advisable, probably more effective, rather, to I'd say direct with the. I always like to say, go for the biggest boots. Who's got the biggest boots in this regard? So you could probably make it even, I mean, there's a minister seemingly out there, there's somebody operating as a minister who thinks seemingly this is their remit. I might even send it to them.
Okay.
What, the actual contract?
Yeah, your offer.
Well, your counter offer.
If you want to send me the 44, I'd be very happy to comply. If not, I understand that you're going to release me from any obligation, perceived or otherwise. Happy days. God bless. Don't let the door hit you in the arse on the way out.
And what about the wording on it, Vin? Because
I'd be very careful. I would I always say less wording on a page, the better. And if if you're sending somebody in officialdom some type of document, I always say if you can't fit it onto one page, you're the one in error. You should never need two pieces of paper. If you need two pieces of paper, you don't have the situation clarified in your mind correctly.
Okay, and what about on the census now? On the first page, probably a couple of paragraphs down, it says, and this is obviously where people, this will get a lot of people as well. It says, you are, well, it doesn't say, it's printed on the page. You are legally obliged.
So they say. I'd love to see how they would document and verify that apparent obligation. It's an apparent obligation. It's only an allegation of an apparent obligation.
Yeah, see, I've talked about this obligation before, and I happened to be in a location a few years ago where I was sitting on the same table as a High Court barrister, and we got into this debate about obligation, and I said to him, I said, well, let me see, I was actually in his house, long story, I won't go into it, but basically I said to him, what obligation? And I said, well, look, when I go in, if I use your toilet, I'm obligated to use your soap, to wash my hands after I come out of your toilet. Now, I don't have to do it, but I'm kind of obligated to do it, I suppose.
Well, I don't know if that's more an expectation rather than an obligation. Let's say you use the toilet in my house and you don't wash your hands, and somehow you handle some food in our house and we have it too, and we get sick. I may be entitled to, say, sue for damage, etc., which you did cause damage. There was no obligation on you to use the soap to wash your hands, but there might have been, if you will, a compulsion of an expectation, rather, that you would do so to protect me and my family against any potential germs, right? So they're expectations. They're not really obligations. An obligation would be, for example, if you agreed to turn up at my home and to cut my grass because I did the same for you last week and you didn't show, that's an obligation.
But is that an implied obligation? Did you speak to me and go,
oh yeah, let's say we agreed. Let's say you agreed. And if you cut my grass this week, let's say you're going to be away on holidays one week and I'm going to be away on holidays the next week, and I say to you, well, look, if you cut my grass on the week you're away, I'll cut your grass on the week you're away.
Right, so that's an agreement, because they do this thing, as you know, called implied consent, where you're not actually told, it's just implied.
Yes, now implied consent is slightly different. So let's say, for example, you go on holidays and you didn't ask me to cut your grass, but I just cut it for you anyway. I looked over and said, Alan's grass needs a trim. Sure, I have the lawnmower out. I'll just give it a trim. And you come back and you're delighted. Oh, look, Vin must have cut my grass. Thank you very much, Vin. Now, I then go away on holiday and my grass needs a trim and you don't trim my grass. And I'm now in the neighbourhood saying, feckin' Alan, there was an implied contract there. It was implied that he'd cut my grass when I was away. After all, didn't I cut his? But we had no firm contract.
Yeah.
So while it may be implied, I can't actually extract any satisfaction from you in, for example, if I tried to sue you, the judge would say, well, hang on, did you agree to cut each other's grass? No, but I cut his. He'd say, well, that's a shame. Too bad, so sad. Get out.
Yeah. Because this whole idea of citizenship and implied consent is something that I've been looking at. Now, we're not getting away from the census, because, but I think
it's all connected.
It's all connected, because here's the thing. I've been looking at the last couple of days. I've been looking at the whole jurisdiction, citizenship, and all this kind of stuff, because it's all this implied. And yes, we had Mark Stevens on the show, and I do have to say I like his approach on a lot of stuff.
Oh, I do too.
Regarding the jurisdiction, I mean, he just basically says, because his idea is, before you even get into court to do the argument, find out if they have your jurisdiction. Because if you don't have jurisdiction, then how the hell can you argue over whether, they're right and wrong and everything else? And
without jurisdiction, there can be no court case.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that approach. Now, today I was looking at him and he was talking about citizenship. And when I sent an email off to Dominic Hannigan, who's a TD for Labour, he's not there anymore, thank Christ. Excuse my French, but he was bloody terrible. But he sent me an email and he said to me, as a citizen of the country, you're obliged to go by the rules and regulations of the country, blah, 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 right? Now,
they document and verify that obligation.
Well, here's the thing, right? So I was listening to Mark Stevens and I looked this up as well. And apparently, the whole idea of us, we're not citizens because it's this simple, right? And this is what he breaks it down as, right? There's a kind of a dual agreement with citizenship, right? And one is, you have a duty of allegiance and they have a duty of protection, right? But if your car gets stolen, right, you can't sue the police, because you can't say, well, if you have a duty of protection, I want a policeman, I want a guard right outside my house, and if anything happens, that's why I'm a citizen. They go, well, it kind of doesn't work that way. We have kind of general protection for all the citizens. Well, I'm sorry, but you can't have general protection. If you want me to be have allegiance to you, then you offer the service. And because they don't, then we don't have allegiance. So technically we're not citizens because we're not getting what they're offering. This is his kind of, and he said, not the body corporate, forget what you mentioned, but basically he's saying that there's a lot of kind of presumptions made by the government, and the whole thing of the jurisdiction, the one thing he said, I will say, Vin, was he interviewed so many people on his radio show, IRS agents, assistant law professors, legal people, and when he pushed the jurisdiction and said, well, show me the evidence, they all start making presumptions, and basically what you're saying is, it applies because we say so. Now that's
well, let me tell you this. There's a difference legally between presumption and assumption.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So, the way it works, supposedly, from the system's I'll give you the system perspective first. The system perspective, apparently, is presumptions legally require rebuttal. Assumptions do not. So, you see, let's say, for example, some assumptions and indeed some presumptions that these people make are fine by us. So, for example, they might say, well, we're going to assume these people who live in this housing estate are going, and they're all there having children. We're going to assume they're going to need or require a school for their children in 5 years, say, or 4 years. That's one thing. Now, they could also say, well, we presume they're going to need a school. Now, if they presume you're going to need a school, they're going to tax you for it and extract the finances from you for that presumption if you don't rebut it. If they just assume it and just build it, there's no obligation as far as they're concerned even.
So the difference between presumption and assumption is obligation.
Well, not so much the obligation, but one requires rebuttal and the other doesn't, as far as they're concerned.
Okay.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, neither of them require rebuttal.
Right, so if the law states, being a citizen, that because you're a citizen and the laws of the land apply to you, and we know Marx even says about jurisdiction will show us the evidence, they're making a presumption on applied consent. And
if you presume you are a citizen, as according to what they claim a citizen to be, well then sure.
Yeah. Because Marx said, when you're born, you don't come out, from your mother's womb and all of a sudden you agree and you know all this stuff and you agree to the laws of the land. How can you do that? You don't even understand that you're just born as a baby. So
right.
This implied consent.
Right, so what they do is they operate on assumption initially, and then eventually they switch from assumptions to presumptions.
And then it's up to you to rebut that.
Well, some of them. As I said, for me, I don't feel the need to rebut any of them. That's for me, as I said, my understanding of a lot of this stuff, I've had a long time to think about a lot of this stuff. And as I said, I've lined that up a particular type of conduct and use of language, which I call passive conduct and passive language. So I generally, when I'm communicating with people from that ilk, I won't leave them in any confusion as to whether or not I feel there's an obligation to do X, Y, Z, or to not to do X, Y, Z when we're finished communicating. But as I said, I've had a long time to think this stuff through and a long time to work it out, so I don't expect everybody else to kind of just get it that quickly. Because it's not easy. I mean, that's the one thing I want to say to people. This is not easy. It's worthwhile, I feel, but it's not easy. And who said anything worthwhile would ever be easy? But that said, I think it's very effective. And you can start nice and gentle, but the easiest thing in the world, Alan and Steve, is don't open the door.
Yeah.
Number one, don't open the door unless you feel, well, if I open the door, it's like, look, if I open the door is one thing, but let's say somebody hands me a tin of, let's say we're in a supermarket and I say, you hungry? And you say, yeah. And let's say there's no labels on anything in the supermarket. And I say, well, anything you open, you have to eat. And you kind of go, well, what if there's a tin of peaches there? I hate bloody tinned peaches. And I say, well, anything you open, you have to eat. That's what government essentially is saying to you. If you open the tin, you're eating the contents, right? Now, if you then go open a tin, well, don't be surprised if you're expected to eat the contents, even if it is peaches.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas, do you see what I mean? Like, that's the way they kind of operate this thing.
Yeah. I think, I totally agree on that one. Now, we're just waiting on our second guest, and there's no show. Are you okay to run on for a few minutes
Sure.
with us, Vin? Yeah,
Sure.
okay, Steve.
Okay, Vin, just in relation to opening the door, what if you're sitting down and you're having your dinner, well earned, well deserved, and there's a knock on the door, and one of your children thinks it must be for me, and they open the door,
Okay.
and they're
That's
below
very
the age
important.
of 18.
Yeah, that's very important. Number one, I took the time to make sure all my children understand. I have 4 here, 4 wonderful little angels. And indeed my wife, she understands that she accepts I am the protector around here, and my children understand I am the protector, and they understand that means Daddy decides who opens the door. I decide who comes in and who does not come in. So essentially, I have instructed them all, and they know that if they don't recognize one of their friends, for example, if they don't recognize who it is on the other side of that door, they come in to me. Daddy, there's somebody outside. And then I make the determination. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, you may end up in a little sticky situation. As you say, if your kid just opens the door, it doesn't matter if they're a minor or whatever. But let's say, for example, one of my kids just swung open the door, and there's a load of boys in blue suits, and they're talking about fines and penalties and jail time and all sorts of jazz for some potentially civil matter. As I say, this would be for civil matters only, not criminal matters. And I've had something similar happen in the past. What I did was, there was a couple of guys in blue suits, and my child was at the door, and they walked up behind them. I opened the door rather. I just opened the door, put my hand, my child put out my hand, my child put their hand in my hand. I pulled them gently in, and I turned away, and I just swung that door, and it slammed shut, and I kept on going.
That's your hall door.
Well, the door, yeah.
Yeah.
No, the one in his nightdress.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I opened the door in my pajamas, which is a strange place to have a door, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so in other words, if you open the door in error, just bang it shut again.
Yeah.
Instantly, bang.
Yeah.
You know, and if somebody is dumb enough to stick our fingers in the way, that's not your problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I kind of...
It hurt people. I'm not saying we should hurt people, but people really shouldn't be stupid enough to stick their fingers in the way, right?
Exactly. Not if they're asked to, unless they're invited in.
Now, if you engage in conversation with them, and let's say you don't want to go banging the door, you don't want to give it a good slam. The other thing is you could walk out and pull the door closed behind you and just walk down to the shops silently, and maybe you want to buy a pint of milk or something.
Mm.
Or maybe you just feel like going for a walk for 25 minutes or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, yeah, we're back, folks. We're back online. Apologies about the server or the computer or the software. It just had a moment, so we're back streaming again. So
Brilliant
we can
stuff.
get back into it.
Okay, so before, there's a couple of the subjects that we want to move on to, but just to finish up on the Census 2016, Vin, you said I had another couple of things that you heard through the grapevine from people that their methods they were using. So do you want to tell us what they are?
Well, what I'd say is I concede that there's a lot of people out there, I'm going to say they're using terminology that could be viewed as quite aggressive. I'd like to really discourage people from doing anything like that. I'd like to discourage people from being rude to the census workers. They're just people. I know they don't really understand this stuff, folks, but that's kind of why you don't say anything to them in that regard, because they don't really understand.
Exactly.
I know a lot of them are quite keen. I mean, they seem to be knocking on people's doors. Somebody said to me in one of the chat box there, I think it was Tiger Boy and Air Chat and PIR, should we hide behind the curtains? I don't think you have to hide behind your curtains. Leave the curtains swinging wide open. By all means, they can see if you're in or out. I mean, I'm not talking about hiding in the bathtub here, folks. But if they see you walking around inside paying absolutely no bloody attention to them whatsoever, they're only going to knock until their knuckle hurts, right? And then they're going to give it up and walk away. Those people have apparently some bonus that if they get all their census paperwork filled out, they get a €1,400 bonus or something like this. So they're quite keen. But again, that's not my problem. It's not my issue. That's their issue.
They are very keen. I have to say that they're very good employees. I have to say.
Well, on top of that, as I say, they don't necessarily understand fully what they're up to, and more than likely they get their head filled full with a load of nonsense when they're being trained in inverted commas, you see.
Yes, exactly.
So, but they may just be the type that just sit there, listen, comply, and then they get told, you have this power. And they go, yes, I have the power. They believe, it's something they believe, you see. They believe they have this power, and I'm saying, that's okay. I don't have to wake them up. I don't have to, I don't have to interact with them in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, I think the most effective way of waking them up is when they realize, bloody hell, I can see that guy in there. I can see his family, and they are clearly disregarding me. They are clearly not feeling the need for my interaction. And yet I've been told I'm some powerful entity, and yet here I am walking away with my tail between my legs. That to me is a more effective way of making these people think twice about what they're doing.
Yeah. Because they might actually feel, some of them
by all
might
means,
feel
if you're having a birthday party, keep singing happy birthday, blow out the candles, have your dinner, but don't let the fact that somebody's knocking, well, let them knock.
Yeah, you're going to find out that you're going to find one or two actually might think they're even on the level of a guard or thinking they have the same because they've been brainwashed.
Yeah, they get this idea. Yeah. I am important. You see, it's they get filled full of an inflated sense of self-worth, is how I'd say.
Yes, yes.
And that's fine, but that doesn't mean I have to play and join in on that game.
Yeah. Totally.
I don't have to play that sport, that's okay. But, as I said, I don't see the need to be rude to them. As I said, another way, if you're outside, maybe you're mowing the lawn or something, and they come up and think, as I said, maybe you're going to decide, you know what, I will say this though, the property line, folks, your property line, the dwelling is very important. Again, Constitution here, right? So, the 1937 clearly says the dwelling isn't viable, right? To them. That's what it reads to them when they read it. So you can just simply let them know, no trespass. You don't have to say another word. If you feel like saying anything, no trespass. That's it. Only say it once. You only have to say it once. No trespass. You don't have to shout it at them. Nice and polite. You could even whisper, as long as you reckon they can hear you. No trespass. And just walk away. Now, Mr. T would probably say even that's a bit dangerous in some regards, but you could just look up in the sky and say, no trespass.
But aren't you acknowledging that they're there by saying that?
That's why Mr. T would say that's probably not a great idea. But as I said, you could just look up in the sky and say, oh, I don't accept trespass. You just say it to the universe. No trespass. That's, again, as I said, if you really felt the need. I wouldn't feel the need. They could knock on the door all day. I could be out mowing my grass. They can stand in front of me. I'll just mow around them. I won't say anything. I won't mow over them. But I'd be thinking, well, apparently I want to go this way with the mower instead, or I've changed my mind now. I'm going to go that way. Maybe I want to, I don't know. Maybe I want to make a crop circle in my garden. Who knows,
Yeah, well, I just think maybe, if you are cutting the grass and, they turn up, maybe it's time for you to have a break and go in, have a drink and relax.
Maybe you want to go for a stroll. Maybe you want to sit in your car for an hour and listen to the radio. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for your daily meditation, where you sit down and just relax and go all silent in your lotus position. I don't know.
Okay, I think we've covered everything with the census, unless there's anything else you want to add, Vin, there.
I think the last thing, which again, this is only a tiny thing, but I think it's worth repeating. If you're nervous, folks, and if you're of a nervous disposition, well, if you feel you want to just comply as completely as you think you need to, don't feel you're being hypocritical to do so. If you feel you want to do it, by all means do it.
Right. Here's another thing, Vin. Now, some people have said to me that the person had turned up at the enumerator turned up, made them the offer of the form, and they've told them, no, we're not interested, we're not going to take your offer. And obviously the enumerator has gone off with the form. How is that going to be perceived?
Well, essentially, they gave testimony. You see, because somebody gets to say to him, well, did the guy say anything to you? Yes, he did. What did he say? Well, tell you what, don't tell me. Write it all out in an affidavit.
Right.
To be used as testimony, you see. Now, they're probably recording as well. Everybody should be aware of that. In this modern day and age, everybody's bloody well recording, bloody well everything. Right?
Yeah.
So, as I say, the less said, the better. Even I only discuss private family matters within the family. Again, you're not being aggressive. You're just letting them know, hey, I only discuss private family matters within the family, so, that, you don't continue, you're done. But essentially, that doesn't include them. I mean, even if it was my brother that showed up and he said, hi, Vin, I'm census enumerator, I got a job, I no longer recognize him as my brother because my brother's not there, the census worker is there. When the census worker maybe takes off his census uniform, hey, all of a sudden, wow, look, there's my brother. But now we're back in private, but that's now privately he and I.
And obviously, we have to remind people that you have the right to remain silent.
Always.
So sometimes silence is golden.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's always prudent to remain silent.
No, I totally agree. Certain circumstances you don't want to do that.
One always. I don't even go at rights. I usually say one has the ability. See, rights and abilities are different. See, rights generally are there's two ways of looking at rights. Rights are either granted, as in they're privileges granted to a subjugated individual member of a society from an elevated member of the same society, or then there's what people call natural rights. So I skip all of that by just saying, look, do you have the ability? In other words, have you got the ability to keep your mouth shut? Well, then who's stopping you from doing that? Yeah,
I was going to say that the difference between rights and privileges. So we have natural rights and the privileges are what's given down to us.
Exactly. So abilities kind of erases both of those concepts. Do you have the ability to keep your trap shut? Yeah. Well, then there you go.
Well, I actually had this today with my son. Dinner was being served. And he said, I have the right to nick some chicken because we had chicken today. And I said, no. I said, that's a privilege, not a right.
But he would know he still had the ability, right? Either way, he had the ability. There might be consequences and repercussions. Exactly. That ability.
So I explained to him, educated him to the difference between a right and a natural right and a privilege.
That's why it's response ability, the ability to respond. That's what it is, What is your response? Well, what's your response if somebody offers their hand to shake it? Well, if you know them, you might shake it, or if you want to know them, you might shake it. That was your response ability. But if you don't know them and you don't want to shake it, well, you don't have to. That was now your response.
And obviously, looking at this form, if anybody ever said that, are you refusing? If if it ever came up that you did keep the door shut and somebody said, "Oh, you refused the form," you say, "Well, I can't refuse something that I wasn't offered in the first place."
Well, look, sure, but the way I see it is that that so-called form, essentially, it's illegible to me. Now, I'm not saying I'm illiterate here, folks. What I'm saying is that's illegible to me because for me to go and look up all the different definitions and all the ideas and notions that they are attempting to imply that those words in that particular usage manner may or may not have meanings. We all know, legally words can have very strange meanings, depending. I mean, the word shall, for example, can change meaning mid-sentence. So, legally speaking, they are claiming, apparently, it's a legal document. So, I could pretty much assure you, almost nobody really understands or has a good full working knowledge, in layman's terms anyway, of what the hell they're actually saying. Anyway, so I would suggest that's probably, illegible to me.
Yeah. Now, the other thing as well, Vin, that we've been told is that on the actual form, it just has the address and then a number beside it, apparently. So technically, they don't know who's in that house. They just know it's a house with a number.
Well, the interesting thing there is the address that people talk about. The address starts and finishes at your garden gate, folks. From your garden gate to the rear of your house, and right out to your rear of your back garden, if you have one, that's dwelling. Strictly speaking, it's dwelling only. Your postal address is at your gates. That's why everybody should only have a post box out at the gate. You should never have a post box on the dwelling. Right. Because your address is from the centre of the road to your garden gate. Or to that boundary line, whatever,
Yeah. Well, I actually have a land registry confirming that the boundary goes out halfway to your road. I've rang them twice and they confirmed it twice.
But the address is the part you see, it's all of your property as such, right? It's all your dwelling. But when the council, etc., take over the housing estate, is what they say, they do so by acquiescence.
Yeah.
And that's private property with public access from your garden gate to the centre of the road, right? So it's always private property, but it's private property with public access. Whereas from your garden gate to the back of your home, the back garden, whatever it is, that's strictly private. None of that is public.
Now, obviously, if the enumerators are coming in, they're obviously, because you haven't removed their implied right of access, they assume that they can walk in to your garden and knock on your door.
They have no implied right of access. They never did have.
Right. I thought it was implied until you revoked it.
No, only to the address.
Right, okay.
Which is, as I say, which is the letterbox outside, the post box outside.
So they're trespassing then?
Strictly speaking, yes, but it's not a huge trespass in the sense that we have to gauge how serious a trespass is. If somebody murders a member of your family, that's a gross trespass.
Could that be used in court to say, well, actually, they were trespassing, they weren't invited?
But it would be a very weak case, because trespass usually implies some form of damage was been done. Like they trod on crops, they hurt your, whatever. So, strictly speaking, yes, but are you going to find a judge in there that would press that issue for you? Probably not.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't own, actually, I see it's on your chat box there from Pandora. What if you don't own the property? That's where I was going to go next, if that's okay. The same issues apply, which is why the dwelling is the word that's given in the Constitution, protection. Whether you are a tenant, whether you bought the property, whether you're renting, whatever, it matters not. It is always your dwelling.
Okay.
And that is why this applies regardless whether you're renting, whether you bought the place, whatever arrangement you have, it makes no difference. It is your dwelling, end of story.
Now, there is something that you want to tell us about the mortgage thing. You're going to be talking about it in your show at 9 o'clock, but you want to mention it because it's very important. So shoot away there.
It is. What I say is tonight I'd encourage anybody and everybody who has any form of, mortgage issues, distress related, whatever it is. I'm going to talk about something tonight that I've never talked about before, and as far as I know, nobody has ever talked about this before on the media, alternative media, mainstream media, or otherwise. It's essential to understand this, I think.
Okay, can I just stop you there for a minute, Vin? I just want to go over to Steve, because do you have anything that you want to speak to Vin about or mention regarding, the census? And have you heard anything in your neck of the woods? Oh, that mic's a bit funny there. Are you there, Vin?
I'm here, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, there's just a noise coming in there.
A noise coming in there.
Have I heard anything? Well, there is one sitting at home in my home because the door was open when I wasn't there. I don't actually think the address is on it. I think you actually put the address on it yourself, if memory serves me. I think there's just...
Well, that's part of the subject matter jurisdiction, you granting it to them, you see.
Yeah, I think there's just
what letters. You're doing, everything you put on that document, and you say information that can be gleaned and interpreted, you're essentially testifying against yourself and your family.
Yeah.
You're basically a rat fink. You're ratting out your family.
Because I've seen some of them, and I don't know... I've seen one or two because of neighbours, and go in and they had them there, and the address and a number beside it was on the form, and I thought, well, it's only the address. There's no name or anything. It's just an address. But if you're saying that they're sending the form out and there's no address on it, then obviously it's a blank form, technically speaking. Then.
Well, all I remember seeing on the top was I looked at this briefly. I just wanted to see what the questions were, and I just remember seeing the top. There was letters and numbers and things that mean nothing to me. That they obviously mean something to the enumerator. But I don't actually recall seeing my address. It could be there. It could be there. I don't know. There's Morse code.
Morse code coming in there.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
SOS.
Very strange. Okay, so.
Well, one last little itty bitty thing.
Yeah.
Is that essentially the way they're operating this? Consider this. Imagine, if you will, an army full of soldiers, and they have a general, and the general issues a diktat. All the soldiers have to write the number 8 on the soles of their shoes. Okay.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't know, some bizarre reason, and You're not a soldier though, but they're presuming or assuming you're a soldier. And therefore, if they say, soldier, step forward, why have you not written number 8 on the sole of your shoe? And if you step forward and start explaining yourself, even if you didn't think you were a soldier beforehand, apparently you're a soldier now, because they said, soldier, step forward. You stepped forward, you just became a soldier by stepping forward. And it's kind of like, it's like the corporate citizenry. If you tell them you're a member of the, McDonald's, for example, or Starbucks or somewhere like that, if they issue a diktat, all members must wear the following headgear, with Starbucks or McDonald's written on it. They're not going to expect the people sitting in the restaurant eating the meal to be wearing those hats. But essentially what they're doing at this is they're coming into their restaurant and saying, hey, you, why aren't you wearing a hat? And you're not working there. But if you say, oh, sorry, and you put the hat on, I'll comply. Now, apparently, you do work there, or you've just placed yourself under that. That's essentially how this whole gig works. It's a trick. It's just a trick.
It's just a trick. Okay, so tell us, go into the mortgage thing now and just mention that. You're going to be expanding on your show on the clock, but you're going to give us a quick synopsis of it.
Yes, essentially, this is going to be the real quick version, okay, because I'm pressed for time here now as well.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, essentially what's happening is, and again, as far as I know, no barrister, no solicitor, no judge, not even Edmund Honihan, Master of the High Court, who's very good with a lot of this stuff, no anti-eviction group ever, or even myself included, has ever given this information out, or we've never said it to anybody. The reason I've never said it to anybody is it only literally occurred to me earlier on today. It had occurred to me in the past, but I hadn't spoken about it, but it only really occurred today. How significant this is. So I'm going to just give a real quick explanation, and I will go in depth, and I'll take all sorts of questions or whatever from people from 9 o'clock on people's internet radio. But I just want to give you a flavour, so that if you know somebody in trouble, it might be worth their while tuning in and recording. Get a solicitor to ring me in. I'll take calls from a judge, a solicitor, bars, or anybody. They will tell you this is correct. Record it and ask them if you wish. What happens when somebody is in a mortgage situation and they, for whatever reason, fall into hard times and they're finding it difficult to meet the full payment? Usually, at some stage, banks will send a letter with a demand for the full amount of the mortgage to be paid. Now, what happens after that then is they then start proceedings in a courtroom. If you don't comply, you don't give them the wherewithal, they will then start proceedings in court for possession. And I'm going to explain why they, A, should not be doing that, and B, there's something else they should be doing, and C, why that can be useful to you and to your advantage to prevent something nasty happening to you. As I said, I will go into much more detail, but that's the outline of what I'm saying at the moment, is that they're demanding specific performance, essentially, and then they sue for possession. So people right there can see there's something missing. There's a gap, right? There's a gap in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So in other words, if they're demanding, if I'm demanding you owe me 10 grand, Alan, and I send you a demand letter for 10 grand, why am I suing you for the 10 grand? Why am I suing you for possession of your car or your lawnmower or your bicycle or your house, for example? I've demanded you pay me 10 grand, so why am I not suing you for 10 grand? And it's very important that we talk this through and we hammer this one home.
And you'll be doing that on your show at 9 o'clock.
I will indeed.
Brilliant stuff, brilliant. Well, do you want to head off and do what you need to do? Because I know you have to get ready and do what you want to do.
Exactly.
Okay, brilliant. We're just going to go to a musical break. But Vin, before we do that, just give out your details on where people can find you and your show and everything else.
Sure. Well, people'sinternetradio.com. We have a few Facebook pages, of course, People's Internet Radio, and Vincent Temp 1 over Skype. If you ever want to send me a message, 014433309 is a phone number. You can ring. It's a Skype phone. You can leave a message there as well. And but the easiest way, join the site, and we can take it from there.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, Vin, just stay with us there. Just going to a musical break. We'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
That's a little track there from Alan's music collection. Steppenwolf, Born to be Wild.
Little bit better than the Hokey Cokey.
Enough said about the Hokey Cokey. Yeah, Born to be Wild. That's Vin. Vin is Born to be Wild.
Okay.
There we go.
Now that was brilliant information from Vin, and as we say, there samples of information that we received from people and what they're planning to do. In no way are we telling people what to do, because that wouldn't be right, obviously, to do that. We're just telling you what other people are doing, and they've shared that information.
Yeah, because the government are afraid of information like this going out to people. They're afraid of the information going viral, and that's why the government are trying to shut people down, or shut people up, basically. And that's why if we or anyone else were to give advice that you were to follow, then it'd be us they'd be coming after, you know. So that's why we're not giving advice. We're just telling stories.
We're telling you of what we've been told. So we're just passing on the information as we do. Now, we were talking to Vin about jurisdiction, and I've been doing a lot of watching Mark Stevens' videos. Again, I recommend, if you go to OYM Radio, the Facebook page, I put a very, very good video from Mark Stevens up regarding jurisdiction, and he was interviewing an assistant law professor all about jurisdiction. And it's just amazing when you actually challenge people in the legal profession, or people like the IRS and people like that, and you ask them to say, well, you're saying that the laws apply to me, but show me the physical evidence that the laws apply to me. And he kept asking all these people, all the interviews that I listened to Mark Stevens, he said the same thing: please show me the evidence, the physical evidence, and they all start changing the subject, or they had a level of arrogance to say, well, it just applies to you because it does apply to you. And, you know, they were all sidetracking the actual question, or they would say, well, I'm not getting into a legal debate with you. And he said, well, I'm not going into a legal debate. I don't want to get into a debate. I don't want to get into a legal argument. I'm asking you for the evidence. Give me the physical evidence. And none of them could give the physical evidence. So one guy actually said, and this interview that I posted up on the Facebook page, who was the assistant law to a law professor, and he did say, he said, yes, it is kind of presumed because they say so. The law applies because they say so. Now, that's not evidence. That's not physical evidence. You know, I could say, you know, Enda Kenny implied consent. Enda Kenny's going to come and clean my car because I say so. And if he doesn't come and clean my car next week, I'm going to lock him up. Right? How can I have an implied consent for Enda Kenny and obligate him to go and clean my car without me asking him for his consent? And this is, you know, this is how the system seems to work. So basically you have a gang of thugs, which we call the government, and they threaten us because we're forced. Remember, Mark, when was on the show, Mark said a driving license, everything is forced by the government. You're forced to get a driving license. And people go, no, you actually volunteer for that. Well, you go, no, okay. So if I get in my car and drive my car and I don't have a driving license, what happens? Oh, well, you get pulled over by the police and you get arrested and fined. So that means that I'm forced to have a driving license so that doesn't happen. So everything with the government is forced. And I suppose if you look at the census form, you know, there's an implied threat there saying if you don't fill out the form, there is a fine of 44,000. I don't know where you get that from, 44,000. You know, so they're forcing you again, you know, well, they're not forcing you. They've made it in a way that it's kind of coercion, intimidation, so you feel fear and you have to fill out the form. And so this jurisdiction thing I've been really kind of getting into, and the whole citizenship. It was very interesting when Dominic Hannigan TD said, oh, well, as a citizen of the country, the laws apply to you. And then if you look at the meaning of citizen, that it's an allegiance to the state, and their part of this deal is you pledge allegiance and they offer you protection. But they don't offer you protection because there's no guard parked outside my house protecting my house and my property.
Not that you're aware of.
Not that I'm aware of, anyway.
He's in the bush.
So we don't have citizenship, and you even forget about the birth cert thing and all that, you know, trusts and all that. I mean, get down to the fundamentals of it, you know. Carl Lenz I was looking at Carl Lenz talking about this as well, and Carl Lenz said about going to court, he said, they will make a claim against you, so what you do is you'll make a claim against them, and you set up your court. And then you make the claim, and then you ask them about the jurisdiction. I don't know much about the paperwork in courts. I'd rather speak to some experts on that. But I can see the logic in his argument that you don't go into their court, you set up your own court and get them to come into your court. And then ask them the question about jurisdiction. And he's had a number of people, obviously, get awarded a dismissal or getting it struck off using this argument. And there's one guy over here who actually did it in court, in an Irish court. So I've asked Mark to contact him so we can get him on the show to tell us about this jurisdiction and what happened in his case. Excuse me. So hopefully Mark will be able to get back to us on that. But anyway, so that's all about jurisdiction. But there's a couple of things here that we need to read out. Steve, if you want to tell us about that, as a listener, one of our listeners, Dave, thanks for the information that you sent in.
Yeah, Dave says, I've been doing my own research. Oh, hang on. Sorry. I'll start off up here, will I?
No. Start there.
Oh, okay. I'll start here. Exactly where I was. Dave says, I've been doing my own research on it during the week, and what the little reported core of this seems to boil down to is a big wealth fund grab by the US government, in line with the Rothschilds, etc., by getting all major offshore account holders to move their money to the new US tax haven states of Nevada and South Dakota. As the US government has opted out of the OECD Tax Compliance Act, which has forced all other Western countries to sign up to. The Rothschilds, being the founding member of OECD, have forced all banks in Western countries except the US to comply. Otherwise, those countries' banks, they risk being cut off international transfers in the dollar system. Example, Swiss banks have now been fined $5 billion to date. So in the space of 8 years, the US Rothschilds have done a coup d'etat on the offshore economy and turned the US into the de facto largest tax haven in the world. The US sanctimonious position in portraying tax avoidance as unpatriotic and even criminal has been turned on its head. The US is now the new Switzerland.
Yeah.
How about that?
So the whole kind of offshore banking, the Rothschilds and are doing their bit to try and change things. The financial system is in a bit of chaos at the moment, because I was speaking to a few people during the week and they said that the money that the cabal were using has all been cut off. Hence why you're now hearing about the bail-ins that might be taking place. One in Austria, so it was mentioned in the press. I can't confirm that, but they said there's a bail-in in Austria. Now we know what happened in Cyprus, where they actually they took money. Now the money in Ireland and the banks are insured up to 100k, and I know probably the majority of people or everybody that listens to our show, they won't have 100k. So anybody that has 100k or over, there's a good chance that that's where if they're going to do the bail-in, that's where they want to take the money, because the banks are struggling because of the cabal, and the cabal are looking to take money. And last June, I think the end of June, all the banks in Europe signed up to the bail-in, and that's the plan of attack. Now, although they might only take money over the 100k, you never know, they might take more than that. And it could be an excuse where they say the banking systems, there's a problem with the banking system and it closed down on Friday, and it might not open up, or else it might open up and the haircut will be done. And as we all know, putting money in a bank account means that it's not your money anymore, but it's the bank's money, and they can do what they want with it, because it's all about survival at the end of the day for the banking system. Now, on a good note though, as I say, the people I've been speaking to during the week, that the everything seems to be going nutty at the moment. I think if you think about it, if you actually do research and you're going around the internet and you're looking at things, you'll probably find that the world is just going nuts at the moment. I don't know if the people on the chat will agree with me on that one. What do you think, Steve? Do you think that things are just going nutty at the moment?
I do. There's a lot. As we said there, well, last week when we were doing the UWS marathon, we kind of said that there's a lot of things that's going on in the world today, and I'm of the mind that I don't take my skeptical hat off very often, so it's kind of always on. And whenever I hear of anything going down at all, the very first thing I think of is that's engineered. It's to benefit someone. It's taking rights away from people, no matter what it is. So from that, in that kind of respect, yeah, I do believe the world is going nutty. And what I find even nuttier is that we can see this. A lot of people can see this happening, but it's people like us who know what's happening. We can see what's happening, but even some kind of things that are out in the open, when you tell people about it, the closed-minded people, they don't get it, and that's kind of frustrating. When there's a lot of things it's put right out there in their face, and they still don't get it.
Exactly. So, up is down, left is right. Things are going nutty at the moment. And the reason why things are going nutty is because the cabal, the powers that were, not powers to be, are just throwing everything out of the pram to get what they want in as quick as they can before people wake up to what's going on. Now, they're not going to get it. I don't think they're going to get it. And the people I spoke to said they're not going to get it. But basically what they're doing, instead of them logically putting their hands in the air and saying, okay, we give up, we surrender, we know we're going to lose, they will fight tooth and nail to the very, very end. And that's what they're doing, and that's what you're seeing it. Now, something that happens in a corporate company that people need to be aware of, because the cabal, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, are doing the same thing. When you're on the board of directors in a company, and a company is struggling, the last thing you do, unless you really, really have to, is to tell the staff that the company is struggling. You don't say anything. You smile and you go, yeah, the company's doing brilliant, no problem at all. Because what will happen is, if you turn around and you tell the staff that the company is struggling and the company might be go bang, it might go down, the staff will start leaving the ship straight away and looking for different jobs, because they've mortgages to pay and they've food to buy and bills, the whole lot. And so they'll start leaving the ship, which will make matters a lot worse. So the board of directors will generally say, don't tell the staff, don't say anything, because it's all about survival of the company. So what you're seeing is, what's going on with the cabal is that what's happening is the system's going down, and the cabal are throwing everything out there and saying to their staff and their managers of the system, the corrupt system, is, yeah, we're doing great, we're getting there, guys, keep doing what you're doing, it's fantastic, da-da-da-da, right? They're not obviously telling the people that the system's coming down, and the people think that they're winning. And that's what you're seeing, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, and the research I've done, that they're throwing everything at us because they want their system to be put in place. But we'll all be told during the week that the system is coming down. I've also been told that the dollar's not going to crash. The reason being is because if the dollar crashes, not only will it affect America, but it will affect us. We'll all suffer from it, and it means the cabal can bring up a new system and start all over again. And the good guys, or the white hats, if you want to call them that, don't want that to happen. Now, I know people out there saying, let the dollar crash, but they don't want the dollar to crash, because if the dollar crashes, it's going to affect everybody. Now, this is what I've been told. Whether it happens or not, we don't know. We'll watch for the next few weeks and see what happens with the banking system, but they don't want the dollar to crash because it'll affect everybody. And also with the oil as well. They're doing things with the oil to stop the oil from going down to like $10 a barrel or whatever. So the white hats are being involved in there. They're trying to take a very mild change of the system, where they're trying to convince the people who are involved, the lower levels of the cabal, because the people at the top are gone. There's now 5 factions apparently fighting between each other. You've got the Panama Papers that came out. That's one faction going against another faction. Now, apparently you're going to be seeing another set of Panama Papers Part 2 going to come out that's going to expose even more stuff, maybe in the next few weeks. And these factions are fighting each other. And like anything, gangs rioting, just let them fight each other, and whatever left, then cleanup will happen. But they will try and avoid the dollar crashing, because that will play into the hands of the cabal, and the white hats don't want that to happen. So something to watch out for. As I say, there's a lot of chaos going on out there at the moment, and it just seems like not everybody, but certain things are just nutty. Well, that's why, because of all that. So you just kind of, hang strong and stay grounded and hang in there, and hopefully, it'll all kind of sort itself out in a few months' time, because this year is very poignant year, 2016. But keep doing what you're doing. Wake up, educate, teach people, and pass on the information. Steve, is there any questions there coming in from the chat?
There was a couple of questions for Vin earlier from Chris and Dave. No, sorry, Chris and Grambo. I just want to say they were kind of a little bit off topic, and if we had have had time, we would have went down the road with those other questions. However, I have sent them over to Vin, and maybe he will be so kind as to, when he has a chance, answer them for us. If he does by next week, that'll be fantastic. Then we can read out the answer. So apologies for that. We do have a comment on the chat there from Dave, and Dave says all EU countries were required to implement the bail-in law as they see fit. Ireland has not disclosed yet what the new count cut-off point is, so he says the 100,000 could be wrong. So it could be far higher than that, or it could be far lower than that, which is probably more realistic.
Yeah.
He says it's best to split your savings across many banks, even different countries, if you can. And then to add a little bit of humour, Chris says that he has his savings spread across many banks, piggy banks.
Most of us have no money anyway, so we
I
don't have to worry about that.
I haven't got a piggy bank. What's the other one? He hasn't got a pit to pass in.
Yeah, something like that. How was your week anyway?
I'm glad you asked that. This ungodly hour, 10 minutes to go. I just had something on my little piece of paper.
Okay. And the winner is.
Go on, open the envelope, Marty. No, we were talking there a couple of weeks back about sodium bicarbonate. And I just found some information that I just thought it was kind of interesting, because Alan was talking about adding the sodium bicarb to the green tea, and it was alkalizing the green tea, and it didn't affect the flavour too much. And I was thinking, wow, if we could just add a little bit of sodium bicarb to a lot of things, then, it would probably alkalize them, and it might be good. But a British scientist in the Royal London Hospital done a study, and the study showed that sodium bicarbonate can slow the progress of chronic kidney disease. Yes. The study showed when sodium bicarbonate was used in conjunction with established treatments for kidney failure, that it can actually slow down the decline of the kidney function. There was a 2-year study, and the result of that was only 6.5% of all participants involved in the study needed dialysis. And they said that was a fantastic success, because before that, 33% of them were already on dialysis. And they suggest in this, well, it wasn't suggested in the report, but was suggested in the article, that what you can do is you can mix a tablespoon, and I actually mentioned this last week in the chat room, you can mix a tablespoonful of sodium bicarb and half a teaspoon, if desired, of a high quality salt, like maybe the Mediterranean, or the Celtic sea salt, or the pink Himalayan salt. Something like that. Mix it into 1.5 litres of water and drink that throughout the day. What you can also do, and of course I didn't want to say this without trying it myself, because I'm kind of like that, you can also just get the sodium bicarb and place it directly under your tongue, straight off the spoon, under your tongue. And I have to say, I'd done it. I was cringing here. I'd done it, and I thought it was going to be absolutely vile. I was waiting to puke my after I'd done it, but it wasn't that bad. In fact, it didn't taste bad at all. So
but you're the one that said raw cabbage juice wasn't too bad. Raw
cabbage juice is fantastic, and the farts you do after are brilliant. Anyway, so I mean that's another thing you could do as well if you want to just alkalize the body, because when someone when someone's having it's not a heart attack. Well, I think cayenne pepper is supposed to be good for a heart attack. I think that goes under the tongue as well. There's another situation, I can't remember what it is, angina. When people have angina, if they're having an attack, they get this thing, they put it under the tongue. It's supposed to be the best way to get it into the system. So a little bit of sodium bicarb under the tongue from time to time is quite good for alkalizing. They also mentioned in the article that I read that and we know this as well, and if you can check it out on the internet, you will find loads of ingredients and recipes using sodium bicarbonate to make cleaners, natural shampoo, and also natural deodorants as well. There's loads of a plethora of information on the internet telling you what you can do with that. So another use for sodium bicarb. So there we go. Just thought I'd mention that. How was your week?
My week wasn't too bad. I actually spent a week being a vegetarian.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to say that. Yeah.
You know, live long and prosper.
He did, yeah.
Okay. I did spend a week, and I'm going to spend another week being a vegetarian because I'm going to give it 2 weeks, and then I can say I was a vegetarian for 2 weeks. Need I say, well, you know, the food was quite bland, and my son said...
No, it wasn't.
It was bland, and my son said I was getting quite moody. I was missing my carnivore instincts.
Yeah, but hang on a second, hang on. When you gave up the smokes, were you moody?
Well, no, because that was something I chose to do. I said, I knew it was definitely the right reason.
So you're being forced into give up meat.
No, but you know, I want to. I want to experience. I want to see do I notice a difference. I will say one thing, that I do feel I have a little bit more energy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a few other things.
I wish I could say the same.
There's a few other bodily functions that I won't go into. That what happens when you're vegetarian. Your missus told me about actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not pretty, is it?
Okay, it's not pretty.
No.
So that's it. Now, just before we finish off, just a couple of things. Again, at the start of the show, we said the Hub/Westmeath Land League are set up in Mullingar. They need volunteers. If you can make a cup of tea, do a bit of typing, take a phone, take a message, and you have a few hours to spare, please contact them and head down. They're doing a great job. Dermot and Sandra are doing a great job, but they need help. They're literally inundated with phone calls from people in despair, and they just need people to help out. It can be anything. So please go down there, please contact them and ask them. The Facebook page is up there, Westmeath Land League. You can you can find them there. If you're not sure or you can't get the details, send us an email, oymradio.com, info@oymradio.com, and then we will send you the details. And the other thing, quickly, check out a website called rsoe.hu. Right? This is a website I was given during the week. Now, we know there was a major earthquake down in Ecuador yesterday. Okay? Now, apparently what you can do on this website, it tells you all about things that happen around the world, like volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, tropical storms, super volcanoes. Okay? It gives you a map of the world, and you can click on what's happening in that country at that time. Now, the person said to me, he said, if you click on the information and it has a depth of, like the earthquake has a depth of 10 kilometers, okay, that's HARP technology, alright? Anything other than 10 is natural, but if it says 10 kilometers or thereabouts, they're using HARP technology, okay? So, my question is, Ecuador got hit. Now, I don't know, I'm putting it out here, I don't know whether it's going to, or whether this has anything got to do with it, so it's just my opinion, okay? But basically, is that the website that you just typed in?
Is it available in English?
Let me just put it in the chat room here, and you'll see it there, Steve. Then you can. That's the actual address there. It says HISZ.orsoe.hu/ALERT map/index2.php. So, but look, if you want the link, email us. We'll send you off the link. There's no problem there. We put it in the chat room anyway. So that will tell you. But if it's 10 kilometers, then it's HARP technology being used. The whole Ecuador and Julian Assange and all that. You know, are they hitting Ecuador because of Julian Assange? I don't know. I'm just guessing. Okay.
Sorry, would that mean, I just actually clicked on one there at random while you were talking about that, and it says magnitude 5.1, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, Tristan, I don't even know where it is, it's in the deeps, in the south anyway, but it says the depth was 59, oh no, sorry, I misread that, sorry, you said 10.
10.
Yeah, okay.
That's 59, so that'd be natural.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So if it's 10, it's generally HARP. So if you pop over to that website, you'll see all the things that are going on the planet, or as much as they list up on the website. And if you click on the information, it gives you more information, tells you all about the whole situation, what's going on. So just something to look at that I came across during the week. Again, good luck with the census. I think next week is the 24th when you're supposed to fill out the census to say who's in your house.
Yeah.
If apparently there's going to be people in the house and stuff like that. We hope the information we gave you tonight, based on what we've been told by people, helped you in some way to decide what you want to do with the census. Everybody has to make their own judgment call on it as to what you want to do with it. The podcast is going to be available after the show, about an hour after the show tonight. Bar the edit, we'll have to edit it because we had a server crash, obviously, and we'll take out the bits and pieces and just join it all up as we normally do. It all comes out in the editing, as they say.
All comes out in the wash.
Now, next week, actually, I didn't put on my list for next week, but next week, off the top of my head, we have Garnet Schoolhauser and we have Tony Pender. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Neither do I.
This is one of Steve's contacts. So
I don't know how to pronounce either.
Garnet has a new book out, but he's been on the show before, and basically, Garnet was talking about his spirit guide who actually paid him a visit, or he's seen this tramp on a bench and he went over and it turned out to be a spirit guide, and he's going to give us more information regarding that. Anthony, Steve, will you tell us about Anthony?
Yeah, Anthony, by his own admission, he just says, I'm a guy who knows some stuff. And if you want to check out some of his videos kind of in preparation for next week's show, so you can decide whether you want to whether you want to join us or not, and I think you will, just pop onto YouTube and just simply type in a guy who knows some stuff. And you'll find some of his informational videos there. He's a good guy, and he's agreed to come on and share some of his knowledge and wisdom.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, so good night, everybody. Have a good one for myself, Alan James. Vin, as it was on earlier, he's going to be talking all about mortgages more in depth. Worth a listen. Pop over to Vin and listen to the show. It's going to be great information for people who are struggling and need some information. For myself, Alan James, take it easy. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.
Okay, and for myself, Stephen George, it's been a fantastic show. Loads of great information. If you're listening on Airstream, we're going to pull the plug now, so switch over to PIR and join Vin. Okay, take it easy, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Open your mind.